If the audio doesn't sound that great, know that it's because I'm filming outside, because if I film inside and then I say something like a little bit louder, it sounds like somebody fired a gun at the mic, and I don't know, just have fun. Okay, hi everyone. Today I'm gonna do a video about me trying to do something extremely ridiculous because I did 7 days, 7 renders, and I know that maybe some of you may follow me on my Instagram, and you know that I posted those pics in more than 7 days span, so it's actually like 10 or 11 days 7 renders, but it's more catchy if you say it's 7 days 7 renders, but whatever. For the first day I wanted to make something thematic with the new RTX 3060 I'm gonna get soon. So I made a NVIDIA RTX 3070 graphics card model. And no, it's not sponsored. I just really like the way it looks and I wanted to make it. And it was extremely simple. I just traced out the image, added a few of those like things for cooling. I don't know what the hell that is, and it kind of worked. The hardest thing to make was actually the fans, but it wasn't that hard again. I just modeled it, added a solidify and then a subsurf modifier, and it worked kind of perfectly. Then I added some RGB lighting, and to top it off, I was like, how can I improve this? And then I animated the colors to go full circle, and then I made the camera circle jerk around the graphics card. It was really fun to make, and the final result is pretty good in my opinion. I wanted to make like a computer part for a long time. Once I made a processor, but it was really shit. And I'm happy with the result now. For day 2, I made a new logo for my channel. I was actually for like 2 or 3 months at the beginning of my Blender career, I was just doing Vaporwave, and I have quite an experience in it, but I never actually made something that looks like realistic. Not realistic, but has high poly models and everything. I just used like a plane, subdivided it a lot, and then added a wireframe modifier. So it was still a bit challenging, but doing like the waves and the dolphins and the lighting and the moon, I used some of my best techniques, and I'm extremely happy with this result. It's actually my favorite one of entire 7 renders because I used a lot of effort, and it's even a time lapse on it on my channel, so you can go and look at it. But I guess it wasn't that challenging because it's still vaporwave and you don't need to watch out for like realistic problems or whatever. It just needs to be aesthetic and then saturation and neonic colors, and it's basically done deal. I used a vaporwave color palette, so it wasn't again that hard. And I used some of imported 3D models, which I didn't do in any of my other shots or renders, but it's still really good looking. Then I think for day 3, I decided to make a low poly scene. I never actually did low poly because I kind of feel like cheating when you do low poly because it's actually almost nothing of a work to get like a low poly result. So I try to make it really good by making actually low poly stuff and then duplicating it a lot to get high poly result. And the actual file size wasn't low poly because there were like 1,000 or 2,000 building with each like 10 vertices or something. I don't know. So it wasn't that low poly, but when I did the entire city, I was like, this looks like shit. And then I made an entire castle and like catapults or something, and it actually panned out really good. But I was still unhappy because it just looked like everything else. If you just Google low poly, you can find a million results like it. So I added a depth of field, and then I was like, yeah, I can make it look like it's a miniature. And you might ask, how am I gonna do that? And it's basically a lots and lots of depth of field. And then finally, I was like, yeah, but this still looks like shit, so I added an animation. and then my friend added some sound, and it's this render. For this render, it was actually challenging because you can just duplicate one house and then rotate it a little bit. So I modeled like 4 houses and then duplicated them a ton, and it was really good. For like the floors of it or something, I wasn't that happy with the result because it's hard to make it look nice with just low poly because it's literally cylinder that's a little bit modeled, and I just like stretched it out on the x-axis by a little bit and then stacked it a lot, made the like forest, so it's more like dynamic or something. But I'm not really happy with the way it turned out because if it's low poly, you can't really do any complex shading, and doing complex shading is one of my favorite things in Blender. So I'm not gonna do low poly again anytime soon. So don't get your hopes up. Then for day 4, actually I skipped a day, but then for day 4 I made like, once I was in New York and I had this really cool ornament of it. Like I don't know how to explain it, but it's really cool and I wanted to make it in Blender for a long time. And the way to do it is actually I just modeled some simple things and then imported like Statue of Liberty, decimated it a little bit so it's not that heavy of a geometry, added some waves, some like fans, I don't know, just to make it look a little bit more normal. And then I parented an icosphere with low poly count to it and instanced it at vertices. So basically, wherever the vertex is, there's this white, diffuse, translucent icosphere, and it actually looked really cool. I think I could go extra 10%, but I didn't have the time because it was already the end of the day. But I'm definitely gonna redo that sometime and make it like perfect to make it look completely realistic. My problem right now is that I didn't do correct modeling and it was uneven geometry and I couldn't make the ball really big or really small, so it just kind of looked like a little bit janky, but I'm still happy with it. Then I did a simpler vaporwave scene because I thought it was really cool the way the moon looked in the logo, because it was like at the side it was glowing and in the middle it was completely realistic. I really liked how it looked, but it's a logo, so it didn't really like, you couldn't see it. So I just wanted to make a vaporwave scene with just the moon, and the moon actually turned out great. The way I usually went about doing vaporwave scenes with like a plane and a wireframe modifier is I subdivided it a little bit, and then with proportional editing set to random, I just grabbed a few vertices on the z-axis, dragged them up a little bit, subdivided it more, so it doesn't look completely shit, and then added a wireframe modifier, set the wireframe to be like glowing material, the ground for black material. But this time I actually subdivided it a lot in the first place and then added the displace modifier with the clouds texture. And I think I'm gonna do every ground of Vaporwave from now on this style, because you get much more control once you're done modeling. Because at some point, if I wasn't happy with the way it looked, I could just change the texture or something. And I'm really glad I found this way. So recommended plus plus. Then on my Instagram, somebody requested like a camera movement tutorial. So then I animated like a drone shot or something, and I really liked the way like the lens distortion worked. It like it made everything look like wow. It's like, I don't know, sci-fi or some shit. Then I wanted to make like wannabe vaporwave, but it's also realistic scene with like a boat or something. And I was like, yeah, I want to make a boat, and so I made a boat. And then I used some procedural modeling. It wasn't the same way that I made the ground because it was done in a shader editor with like a noise texture and then mid-level set to 0. And I know it looked really cool, but the problem was there wasn't much there, so I added a circle, and it was glowing, and I was like, nice. And then I added again like the lens distortion effect, which made it look like really cool again. And I'm again proud of this one. The only problem I have with it is it didn't take much time. Like I spent like 2 hours or 3 hours on it. That's not much. Like on the low poly scene or like my logo, I spent at least like 4 or 5 hours. So the only thing I don't like about it is the amount of work I used. The only problem I had with this is how to make the terrain look good, and I always add like a ambient occlusion node to make it like glow in essence, I guess. But that wasn't enough this time. So then I just dimmed everything with like clouds, and then added clouds in the background, which were pink, because why the hell not? And I like the result very much. Then for my final render, I was really, really excited because I wanted to make like a realistic scene, and I was working on it for like 6 hours. No joke. That's like entire footage of it. It was crazy. I was like, yeah, I want to do that, and then I like stacked textures and hand painted the factor map, and then like the water and like I don't know what I was doing, but I was like, yeah, it's gonna look perfect, and then I rendered it, and it looked so horrible. I couldn't get over how bad it looked, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna release this. This is so bad. I can't like release it or something. It was just mind blowing how bad it looked, and at some point, every CG artist is like, I could make something realistic, or I can make a badass explosion, and I made a badass explosion. Because badass explosions are not that hard to make. You just don't use meshes as emitters, use particle systems as emitters. And if you like want a uniform emission, don't set it to like a UV sphere with initial velocity, but rather add a particle system with a high initial velocity and short lifetime, because it's gonna look so much better. It's not gonna look all uniform. It's gonna look like it's actually exploding individual bits of like gunpowder or whatever the hell it's exploding, and the end result look really cool. I didn't want it to look like those cheap explosions you can find like basically anywhere, where you like set the black body intensity to 1 and then leave the temperature at what it is, because it looks like red explosions, and that's ugly as shit. And I set it to 2000, but then the problem was it was too hot, so I had to saturate it post production. But that's not that big of a challenge. It was just a challenge to make the smoke not glow and the explosion glow. But it was really fun to make again. And this was actually all that I have for you. I hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good life. Bye.